So that's probably one of the things that I would have done differently. Cash flow's coming in, the bank loves me, I can get a loan of any sort.
People rent Lambos.
Properties keep getting paid down by other people going to work. They work 40 hours a week to pay my mortgage.
What's up, YouTube? We're here with Bryce Kaminsky, and I'm Patrick J. Hilario, your real estate investor and real estate coach. And today we'll be talking about why, as a 16-year-old, you should actually care about real estate and real estate investments.
Chasing lifestyle is expensive, especially if you're watching TikTok, and which is like a huge angle for a lot of Gen Z people, is they're spending a lot of time in that ecosystem where they're exposed to a lot of fake lifestyle, right?
People rent Lambos.
Yeah, like a lot of rented lifestyle, and that's not going to have a compound effect over time. It might not be the most glamorous existence to like live in one bedroom and have roommates, but you're gonna have roommates anyway, so it's whether you're gonna be paying rent to them or paying rent to yourself and getting rent from your other roommates, so that you can actually start offsetting your living expense as early as possible. We really don't talk about that in school at all.
Not at all.
Like, I think my maximum exposure to like mortgages was a 2-week unit on mortgages in grade 11, where they talked about like how it's calculated.
Right, yeah.
But it was like, okay, compound interest. Thanks for the math, the math update. But never like, okay, what about compound equity? What about financial freedom from your most common expense, which is like, where am I going to live? If I can alleviate the cost of where I live, how much more can I do my passions instead of chasing a job or going to a job and sitting there wishing I was doing something else? You know, artists, musicians. That's one thing I'm always really promoting to them, is like, you're not going to have a super consistent income. So you have to make a consistent income somewhere else. You have to make your rent a zero. If you can have a zero rent, that's going to alleviate your mindset to be a musician, to be an artist, to start that business, because nothing's going to hold you back more in starting and getting to what you want, like what your soul is driving you to do, than having to pay rent. So you're going to work at McDonald's, or you're going to work, I mean, there's nothing wrong with McDonald's. That's like cash for you to go and hang out and do things for. There's nothing wrong with furnishing out your basement and living in the basement of your unit and having your unit upstairs rented by someone who's paying fully the mortgage and a little bit, like $300 or $400 cash flow. And then your gig economy, whether you're doing like, maybe you're really good at English and you want to be an editor. There's lots of jobs online to be an editor. You don't have to go and get a job to be an editor. You just have to start editing. Like, you just have to learn it, start editing. Do that in the basement. Let's say you make $500 or $600, $700, $1,000 a month doing that. Then you've got your regular income from your rental property. Maybe it's $500. You got $1,500, and it doesn't seem like a lot of money, but you don't have a rent payment. So that $1,500 is yours.
Yeah.
So if you look at it like a single person living in a basement, it's not about like having a beautiful thing when you get started, because everyone gets started in the dirt. But if we can start laying a foundation early, instead of like me, I started in real estate when I was 30.
Right.
So I had like no exposure. Yeah, my grandparents, my parents, people were in real estate, but I had no idea what I was like. Even to this day, I haven't filed a mortgage, because all of the deals that I do are short deals. I buy it, I sell the contract. I buy it, I fix the house, sell the contract. So I've never had to go to the bank and deal with the mortgage system.
Yeah.
But that's just a reaction to the type of real estate that I do, which can make a lot of money. Like, if you're 18 and you're hustling houses, you're doing like a wholesale a month. Wholesaling meaning buying the contract, selling it to another guy. I buy the contract, I hold the paper, and I don't put any money on it. Then Patrick wants to buy it. He gives me like $5 or $10 grand because I bought it. You know, I have the house at a certain price that he thinks is good. He's going to go turn it into a rental. He pays me 5 or 10 for finding it. You know, what can you do with 10 grand, 5 grand, 3 grand?
Yeah.
When I started
That's huge.
wholesaling, it was $1,000, $2,000.
Yeah.
But you do that a couple times a month or even once a month, and it's, you know, you do the math on a part-time job, or you do the math on even just a full-time average job at like, what's minimum wage these days? Like, I think it's 15 or 17
now?
bucks, depending on where you are in the country. It might be as high as 20 bucks, BC, Ontario. But it doesn't, like, wages aren't keeping up. What's nice about real estate is it's a hedge against inflation. As inflation goes up, so too does the inflated price of the house, because the house is still worth something. It's a tangible thing. It's not Bitcoin, you know, it's not a stock. While those do perform well, you know, in inflation, they can perform well. But at the end of the day, when you're starting really early, you got to get into a tangible asset. Something like, you know, you hear the story, someone's like, oh, I was in a band when I was 16, 17, and I bought this guitar and I've had it for 40 years and now it's worth twice what it was worth. Okay, tangible asset. It's an example of a cheap tangible asset you can get into, but it's not appreciating because it's not something that must be owned. You know, we all have to live somewhere. We've talked about inflation, we've talked about getting in early, we've talked about, you know, what I've done in real estate, which is a short game, which didn't do me any good. You know, I've probably bought and sold over 100 something properties. If I would have kept, imagine I kept all of them.
Right.
Imagine I had 130 houses right now. We probably wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be in Mexico somewhere.
Yeah.
But I didn't make that decision. I made a decision to be short on it. And it worked for what I was doing with my life, but when I look back now, 8 years ago, I should have maybe pulled 1 or 2 for myself. Then I would have had, let's say, 10 or 30. You know, that would have been a different financial like foundation for what I want to do, because now the banks love me.
Yeah.
The cash flow's coming in. Yeah, I might have some like bad tenants here and there, but cash flow's coming in. The bank loves me. I can get a loan of any sort. You know, the properties keep getting paid down by other people going to work. They work 40 hours a week to pay my mortgage. The house sits there, they're paying down it. I don't even have to actually like deal with it. I have a management company, or you manage it yourself. Maybe you want that job and you want to deal with it. Maybe you like people like that. How can someone get started? If you're 16, let's think about this. What's the way to make sure that you can get in? You can probably get on title, or you can be a shareholder in a LLC your parents can set up for you, like a corporation.
Big corporation, yeah.
So you can buy a house, not technically. There probably is a workaround for a 16-year-old who wants to buy a house. But you probably need someone who's of age 18 to be on the title with you.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do is you can start asking your grandparents and your parents, because they have the mentality of the stability of houses. They were taught that it was a thing that you buy a house, you own it right away, and you try to get rid of that thing, you start paying yourself back. So I guess they can get a mortgage somehow.
Yeah.
You know,
Finding a way.
Yeah. But then the first question is like, how do you get the money?
Yeah. So
What would you do?
Easiest option is probably just get a job and just save your money. Like, have good financial literacy. Obviously, make more than you spend. Like, you don't need to be eating out all the time. Just
You have a budget.
Yeah, have a budget, bankroll that money. Or, like Bryce was saying, get into the gig economy, right? Like, if you have a skill, a passion, and you can even make close to or similar income than minimum wage, like, why not?
Which isn't hard.
Yeah.
You could have a gig economy. You could save the money. You could get that first thing. You can get 5% down, the closing costs or whatever. You could also get a loan from your parents or your grandparents. You don't just say, hey, I want to own my first house. I don't plan necessarily to live there, but you know, your first house was relatively expensive, $262. That's not a cheap house that you bought.
Cheap house,
There's cheaper houses in existence, and that was only $13,000 down.
Yeah.
So, you know, for what your grandparents or your parents might be putting down onto your university savings, like they might even have an education savings plan, you can probably even use that RES as a registered education
savings plan.
you can use that RESP savings account, you could probably use it as a down payment.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can, because then as long as you're going to school and you live there, and it's like you got to pay for a living if you're going to go to school, right?
Yeah, so you could probably get your parents to take their education savings plan and help you buy that first house. So you can be in a house at 18, going to university or college, having your friends renting from you, and have all of the financial expenses of going to university kind of off your back. Because I remember when I was going to university, go there 8 o'clock in the morning, finished at 4, go and have something to eat. Now you're working from 6 until 10, 11 o'clock to pay for your university. And, you know, if you had that time to study after school or just be a university college student, you're going to have a way different experience than if you're hustling to make rent and to pay for your tuition, because not all of your parents are paying for your tuition if you decide to even go. You know, like what if you just at 18 decide I'm going to be a landlord?
Yeah.
You know, some of the most successful real estate investors that I've dealt with have started a little later, but there's been a few that have really started young, and you know, when they're struggling with it or whatever, and I say, you know, it's going to be like, you're what, 28 today?
Yeah, I'm 28 today. Yeah.
I hadn't even started real estate for another 2 years.
Right.
So you're not only 5 or 7 years in, but you've got another 2 years before even when I started, which was 8 years ago. So the earlier you start in real estate, the more profitable it's going to be, because things keep rising. Our dollar gets less and less powerful, which makes things in property go up. You know, if our dollar's more worthless, things that are real like cars and houses go up because it takes more of our fake money to buy a real thing. So getting in, you can probably figure out a way to buy a house at 16, 17, 18, and if not, start making your plans to really, you know, what if your 18th birthday you didn't have a party and you had everyone just say, put some money down on my first house? Like, what if we started doing that as a tradition? Happy 18th birthday, we're not going to drink. Actually, we are drinking. We're drinking at my new house.
Yeah.
Possession's my birthday, you know? I'm sure you could work that out so that you could like capture that first asset really. And if all you ever did was capture the first one and you held that out for 30 years, like what's a house in Winnipeg going to be worth in 30 years? 3, 4, 5, 6? What's anywhere in North America, anywhere in the world? The money is becoming more and more printed with inflation and quantitative easing, that at the end of the day, the longer you hold it, the better it's going to be.